Story 1. So this happened earlier today and was too perfect to not share with you guys. I work in construction as the foreman for a new house build. The location is kinda strange. The house is 250 feet up a hill via a footpath only. All of our materials have to come up this footpath by hand. It's a pain to manually carry, quite literally, an entire house up this hill. One of our saving graces is having the 2 parking spots on the street at the bottom of this hill marked with official no parking signs. Unfortunately, there is an elementary school about half a block away, and the parents of children seem to regularly, at least twice a day, think it's okay to park in our spots. Now, I consider myself a reasonable person, so if someone is parked in the spots and we don't have a delivery or a need to park a truck, I will let it go. If we need the spots and there's someone parked there, however, I will ask them to move nicely, and most of the time they do so immediately. Until today. I get a phone call from the lumber delivery truck that is en route to our location. He says he'll be there in about 2 or 3 minutes. I let him know I will meet him on the street and make sure he has space to park. He's carrying all of the material to frame the roof of our house, which is a lot of really big lumber, and will take easily an hour to bring up the hill. So naturally, I didn't want him parked in the middle of the street with his hazards on for an hour, when we have a perfectly good parking spot for him. As I begin my trip down the hill, I notice there is a school parent sitting in her car idling. Assuming she's just waiting to pick up her child, I walk up to her car and politely let her know that she is parked in a no parking zone and we really need her to clear it to park a delivery truck. She scoffs at me and rudely states back, "I'll just be a few minutes, and your truck isn't here. Take a chill pill, dude." Before I can respond, a giant lumber truck comes around the corner, and I wave to him, and then gesture towards him to the woman in the car, who has now put her window back up to ignore me. I put on my best customer service smile and wave at her through the window. She put it down halfway and angrily shouts, "What?" By now the truck has pulled up alongside her car, and I politely ask her again, with a stronger tone of voice, to move her vehicle, reminding her that she is illegally parked in a tow-away zone. Then she gives me this wonderful idea. She says, "Can't you guys just unload around me? It's not that hard." I give her another smile and walk away, a brilliant plan forming in my head. I instruct the delivery driver to park as closely to her as possible and block her in with the porta potty that is at one end of our reserved spots and the parked car that is parked just adjacent to our spots on the other end. He smiles because he immediately gets what I'm trying to do, and proceeds to expertly block this lady and her car into a little 2 parking spot jail. We unstrap the lumber and my guys begin humping material up the hill. Meanwhile, I call the police parking enforcement to let them know the situation. At this point in time, I wasn't trying to get her in trouble. I just wanted a record of why we were blocking part of the street, so we don't get in trouble with the city. The very friendly traffic officer lets me know that she can be there in about 30 minutes and deal with the situation for me. Wonderful. As we continue to unload lumber, the child of the parent shows up. And wouldn't you know it, Mom is just now realizing that the lumber truck is parked so close she can't get out of her driver door to meet her kid. She awkwardly clambers across the inside of her car and stumbles out the passenger door, shooting glaring looks at me and the truck driver in the process. She loads her kid into the back and then begins to realize that she has no way of leaving. She comes storming up to me and the driver and states, "I'm in a big hurry. You need to move your truck right now so I can go." Before I can respond, the driver gets a grin on his face and says, "Ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck, we had to unstrap it. And per our company policy, I'm not allowed to move the truck with any unsecured load on it. Sorry." This sends her into near aneurysm levels of blood pressure. Meanwhile, I can barely contain my laughter. "Screw your policy. I have somewhere to be," she barks back at him. At this point, with impeccably convenient timing, the parking enforcement officer shows up and parks behind the truck. She doesn't see the officer arrive, and while the officer is still getting out of her vehicle, I just casually say, "Can't you just pull out around it? It's not that hard." With the biggest grin I've ever had, I watch as she realizes that I just used her line on her. "Screw you," she yells, and storms back to her car and angrily clambers back in through the passenger door and into the driver's seat. At this point, the officer is walking up to myself and the driver. Before she can even introduce herself, the mom in the car slams it into reverse and stomps on the gas, crashing into our porta potty and knocking it over, and then throws the car into drive and tries to mount the curb and drive on the sidewalk. The officer, driver, and I are staring in disbelief as she gets halfway over the curb and gets stuck. I can hear her screaming obscenities over the idling truck from inside her car. The officer promptly walks up to the door of the car and orders her out. My favorite part of the entire thing is watching her face go into shock as she realized she just did all of that in front of a police officer. She gets slapped in cuffs as the parking officer calls for a second unit, and she is promptly sat on the very curb she tried to drive over. She sits on the curb yelling to the now two officers about how we told her she could stay there and that we never asked her to move. The traffic officer responds that she was the one who was originally called when she first refused to move, and that she already knows what's going on. While myself and the driver are giving a report to the second officer, my guys finish moving the remainder of the lumbar, and the driver finishes his statement and takes off to go back to the yard. By the end of the ordeal, she was arrested, charged with child endangerment. Her kid was in the back of the car, the whole time reckless driving, destruction of property, the porta potty, and driving on a suspended license. On top of all that, she also got her car towed. The kid went home with his grandma, and she went to spend some quality time in a cell. I never expected her to actually heed my advice to just pull out around it. But I think next time she'll probably think twice about parking in a tow-away zone, if she ever gets a license again. Story 2. It was just another ordinary afternoon as I drove back home from a long day at work. I had my trusty old car, not flashy or extravagant, but it got the job done. As I approached a stoplight, I noticed a stunning Lamborghini stopping beside me. Its sleek lines and vibrant red color immediately caught my attention. With the window rolled down, I couldn't help but strike up a conversation with the Lamborghini's owner. "Hey there, nice ride," I shouted with a friendly grin. The Lamborghini owner, a guy in his mid-30s, looked over and smiled. "Thanks, man, it's a sweet ride, for sure." We began chatting about cars, life, and everything in between. Surprisingly, he was down to earth and friendly, not the snobby type you might expect to be driving such an expensive car. "Must be a blast to drive this baby around town," I commented. He chuckled. "Oh, it definitely is. The engine roars like a beast." As we continued chatting, the red light still held us in place. Then, a thought crossed my mind. I had to ask, "Hey, do you mind revving the engine for me? I've always wanted to hear one of these babies in action." He seemed happy to oblige, probably used to getting requests like this. He revved the engine twice, and it sounded like thunder rolling through the streets. "Nice, right?" he grinned. I nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, that's incredible. God bless, man. Have a great day." "You too, man. Take care." Just as the light was about to turn green, drama unfolded in the car ahead of us. Out stepped a woman, with an angry expression all over her face. She looked like the archetype of an entitled person. "What's her problem?" I mumbled, more to myself than to the Lamborghini owner. She stormed over to the guy in the Lamborghini, her finger pointed accusingly at him. "You think you're so fancy with your loud car. Do you think you're better than everyone else because of it?" The guy in the Lamborghini tried to explain, "No, ma'am, But she cut him off, her voice growing even more shrill. "You people with your expensive toys, you make me sick." I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. What the hell was that woman talking about? The Lamborghini owner rolled up his window, clearly trying to disengage from the confrontation. But the woman wasn't having it. She marched right up to his car and began hitting his side mirror. "Whoa, this is getting out of hand," I said to myself. I decided to stay put, just in case the Lamborghini owner needed a witness for the police. The woman continued to pound on the mirror until it finally shattered. Now, the light had turned green and traffic started moving, but I couldn't leave the scene. The woman had caused significant damage, and the Lamborghini owner might need help sorting things out. Finally, the woman seemed satisfied with the damage she'd inflicted. She turned and started making her way back to her car with a self-satisfied smirk on her face. But the Lamborghini owner had other plans. He stepped out of his car, holding something in his hand. He looked over at me and said calmly, "Could you please call 911 and ask them to send the cops here?" "Sure," I said, pulling out my phone and dialing the emergency number. The Lamborghini owner continued, "Oh, and an ambulance too." I got confused for a second, but decided to relay his request to the dispatcher and watched as he walked toward the woman's car. My heart was pounding as I watched things go down. I had no idea what he was planning to do, but I had a feeling it wouldn't be good. He reached into her car through the open window, and that's when I saw a stun gun in his hand. My jaw dropped as he pressed it against the woman and delivered a jolt of electricity. The woman's screams pierced the air as she convulsed from the shock. It was intense, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd never seen anything like it. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the Lamborghini owner calmly walked back to his car and waited for the police. I couldn't just sit there. I cautiously approached the woman's car. She was still inside, trying to collect herself, but she was furious. "Are you okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. She shot me a terrifying look and tried to scream, "Murderer! He's a murderer!" I shook my head, realizing how deluded she was. "Ma'am, you attacked him first and destroyed his car. What did you expect? He was just defending himself." The police arrived shortly after, and the officers began taking statements, and EMS checked on the woman, who didn't really appear to have any serious injuries. The Lamborghini owner explained what had happened to the police, emphasizing that he had felt threatened and unsafe, leading him to use the stun gun. He showed them the damage to his car as evidence. As the chaos began to settle down, I realized that my role as a witness was over after I gave my statement. The police cleared me to leave the scene, and I approached the Lamborghini owner. "Thanks for sticking around, man, I appreciate it," he said, his voice still calm despite the ordeal. I replied, "No problem, glad I could help. If you need anything down the road, here's my number." He took my contact information, and we exchanged a nod of understanding. Then I got back into my car and continued my trip home, leaving behind that unforgettable Lamborghini encounter. It's been 10 days since that day. I haven't received a call from anyone regarding the situation. Sadly, I don't know the current state of the legal proceedings, but I truly hope that the Lamborghini owner isn't in any kind of trouble, and hope that Karen gets locked up for the unacceptable hatred she has shown towards that poor guy that day for no reason. Horrible woman. Story 3. This incident happened right at the beginning of the pandemic, and although there were some legal matters involved, they're now resolved. A little background about me. I'm a small, older woman 5 feet tall and 49 years old with a fairly unassuming appearance. I've worked in nearly every area of retail throughout my adult life, from customer service to, now, co-owning a mid-sized sporting goods store with a couple of partners. With my background, I tend to give off a customer service vibe and often try to help people if they're polite. Additionally, I've trained in martial arts for over 20 years and teach on the side as a way to give back to my community. Our store is located about a block away from a big box retailer, let's call it Tall Cart. I frequently stop there to pick up drinks and snacks for our employees, which helps boost morale. My work uniform consists of a black and gray management shirt with our store's red logo embroidered over the pocket, along with a mask bearing our store's name. Meanwhile, the employees at this other store wear blue or yellow vests with large letters on the back. Now, on to the story. One morning, on my way to my store, I stopped by Tall Cart to grab some soda and chips for my team, along with some janitorial supplies. It was early, so there were only a few customers and staff around. As I loaded soda into my cart, I noticed a man, let's call him Kevin, who looked pretty average, approaching me. Thinking he just wanted to grab some soda, I moved on to the next item on my list. However, I soon realized he was following me down the aisle, and from his expression, I could tell he wasn't happy. Kevin stomped over to me in an aggressive manner and snapped, "What's your problem? You just walked away from me. I need help." To de-escalate the situation, I put on my polite voice and replied, "I'm sorry, do you have a question about insert my store name?" which was displayed on my mask. Kevin looked confused. "What? No. Where is the Diet Mountain Dew? Why would I care about store name, you clueless woman?" I replied, "Well, maybe because I work there and not here. I've noticed this store hasn't had Diet Mountain Dew in stock for a while. You might want to ask an employee if it's on back order." Kevin wasn't having it. "Nonsense. You work here. I see you here every week." He stepped closer to me. I took a step back. "Sir, please keep your distance. We're in a pandemic." Kevin's face turned red with anger. "How dare you? How dare you assume my pronouns? You're trash. Go get my Diet Mountain Dew." Taken aback, I responded, "I apologize for making assumptions, but that doesn't change the fact that I don't work here. What would you like me to call you?" Kevin barked, "I prefer he/him/his, and don't you forget it. Anything else is hate speech. I know you have Diet Mountain Dew in the back. Get it now, or I'll have you fired for being a hateful bigot." I calmly replied, "The term sir is a respectful way to address someone who identifies as he/him/his. But regardless, I don't work here. I'll go find an employee for you." At this point, 2 mistakes were made. The first mistake was mine. I turned my back on an aggressive person who was still clearly agitated. The only reason I can give is that I simply wanted to get on with my shopping and head to my store. I didn't consider him a physical threat. The second mistake was Kevin's. He put his hands on me. He grabbed my shoulder, perhaps trying to turn me around. That's when my 20 years of martial arts training kicked in. Before I knew it, Kevin was face down on the ground in a hammerlock, with my knee firmly pressed into his back. Using my best martial arts instructor voice, I called out, "Attention, any employee. Please call 911. I have been assaulted." Kevin, initially shocked, started squealing. Not yelling or cursing, squealing like a piglet. Suddenly, where there were no employees before, at least 6 staff members swarmed us, including the manager. I kept my hold on Kevin, not knowing what he might do, until the police arrived. The local police department showed up, and one of the officers recognized me as a regular customer at my store. He had also previously mentioned interest in having me teach his child at the dojo. He looked from me to Kevin, who was still squealing on the ground, and I could see the amusement in his eyes. I released Kevin, and that's when his tirade started. Kevin screamed, "Oh my goodness, officers, this is a hate crime. Arrest her, arrest her. She threw me down because I'm gay. I only wanted to get some Diet Mountain Dew. She's pure evil." The officer looked at him, about 6 feet, 180 pounds, and then at me, 5 feet, 97 pounds, with raised eyebrows. Since no one directly witnessed the scuffle, I asked the manager if the officers could review the security footage. The outcome of the incident was as follows. Both Kevin and I were briefly detained while the officers reviewed the footage. The officers then asked if I wanted to press charges, and I declined. Kevin, however, wasn't satisfied. "It's not fair," he whined. "She used hate speech against me." The officer I knew asked, "What did she say, sir?" Kevin repeated his nonsense and even accused the officer of using hate speech. The officers, who were skilled at de-escalating, managed to calm him down. An employee helpfully pulled up the definition of the word "sir" on their phone, and Kevin finally quieted down. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but Kevin eventually figured out where I actually worked. He started leaving reviews accusing us of discriminatory behavior and began calling our store repeatedly, making threats. This behavior escalated until he eventually showed up at my store, caused property damage, and was arrested. This time, I did press charges and sued him for defamation. On a positive note, the officer ended up signing his daughter up at my dojo. Story 4. Cast: Manager me, nice employee May, and Karen the ever-eligible. So I'm a store manager for a large chain pizza place that charges a bit more than the competition, but makes an arguably better product. We try to always believe the customer and make them happy if something is wrong. We have a loyal base of regulars who order often, as well as a lot of other business from random guests in the several nearby hotels. Friday night, Karen calls in an order for a very simple pepperoni and jalapeno pizza. Driver delivers it. 30 minutes later, I'm asked to talk to an angry customer on the phone. Karen: is this the manager? I've been on hold for over a half hour. Impossible, but okay. Me: I'm very sorry about that, ma'am. What seems to be the problem? I'm at the hotel, and your driver was so rude, and my pizza is burned. Sorry to hear that the pizza was not up to our quality standards. Can I make you another and send it out? No, don't bother. You have already ruined my kids' dinner, and they are crying now. Give me credit. This is a red flag. Okay, ma'am, I'll credit your number, and when you order next, it will be free. I'm very sorry again. Have a good night. Whatever. She hangs up. I credit the number and think, whatever, that's the end of it. Saturday night. Hey, this lady on the phone wants to speak to a manager. Me: hello, thank you for holding. This is me. Karen: are you all R-word? How long does it take to answer the phone? I'm sorry. What? You've only been on hold a moment while my employee got me. Don't tell me how long I've been on hold. I know how long I've been on hold for. I'm groaning inwardly already. A fun customer. Yippee. Me: I'm sorry, ma'am. How can I assist you? My pizza is burnt, and you have the rudest delivery driver. They practically threw the pizza in my face. A light bulb clicks at this story. I've dealt with this lady before. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll definitely talk to the driver about it. Can I make you a new pizza to replace the one you said is burnt? No, give me credit. Okay, ma'am, to ensure our quality standards are being met, can I have a driver come pick up the burnt pizza so I can talk to my production staff about it? No, we ate it. You ate the burnt pizza? Yes, we were starving and couldn't wait for a remake, so give me credit. For the pizza you ate. It was burned. Let me speak to a manager. I am the manager. I want to speak to your manager. You are being so rude and disrespectful. It's because I'm black, isn't it? You racist piece of trash. Ma'am: 1. Stop cussing. 2. I have no idea what you look like or who you are. But... She cuts me off. That's right, you trash. You don't know who I am, but you're about to find out. She then hangs up before I can say anything else. Being that she was extra, I let my district manager know about a possible complaint about my behavior and what actually went down. Just as I get off the phone with her, I hear yelling in the lobby. Where is that trashy racist manager? I step around the partition and see a cow of a woman wearing tacky bright green and orange clothes with red shoes. Me: can I help you? Karen: gonna say some nonsense now. Give me a refund for my burnt pizza, and I want gas money for driving over here. You didn't pay for any pizza, it was free, and we don't reimburse gas for people driving to the store. You think this is a joke? You're going to give me my money, or it's going to go off in this place. I'm 100% done at this point. Get out. What did you say? Get out of the store. You can't tell me to leave. This is a public space. No, ma'am, it's a private business, and you are no longer allowed. I'm refusing to serve you. Leave now, or I'll be forced to call the police. Screw you. She continues to bellow this until the police arrive. I had to hear every sing-song version of "screw you" for about 5 minutes. Police: do you want to trespass on her? Me: yes, she isn't welcome here anymore. The police in our town are super cool with us because we give them special discounts and occasionally donate a stack of pizzas to the precinct. Police just outside the main door can be easily heard. Okay, so you are now being trespassed upon. Do not come here. Do not linger in the parking lot, or you will be arrested. This applies for every single pizza store, not just this one. The defeated look on her face when he said that was almost worth the cost of admission. Story 5. I'm a pizza delivery guy and was winding down for a much-needed early close on Mother's Day Sunday. I'm one of the only people on staff who didn't have family plans that day. My family situation is what you might call complicated. So I worked all morning while short-staffed and was pretty beat. It was especially emotionally hammering to deliver so many pizzas to happy families visiting or hosting their moms. I was ready to go home, get drunk, and forget about the whole stupid holiday. So I got a late call, just a few minutes before we closed, and decided to take it because money is money, and it was a pretty big order, 6 pies. So I loaded up and realized about 3/4 of the way to the destination that the address was for the local senior center. They used to order all the time, tip really well, and make really sweet conversation before the pandemic. So I was psyched to see they were safe and steady enough to order pizzas again. I snuck them a side of breadsticks from a jerk who never tips and always harasses our female drivers that I was dropping off along the way. By the time he'd call to complain, we'd be closed. Suck on that. But not on your breadsticks. Anyways, I digress. I got there and was glad to finish off what had been an overall really bad day with a pleasant trip to the senior center and carried the food to the front desk. The receptionist offered to carry the pizzas back, but she looked frail enough to be a senior center resident herself, so I said I was happy to get them where they were going. She COVID checked me and gave me a new mask. Not sure what was wrong with mine, but whatever, and I found my way to some event room where they'd ordered the pizzas. And it was a total gut punch. Literally just a room full of sons and daughters visiting their mothers and having some kind of festive party. My good mood went away real quick, and I dropped the pizzas on the table and shuffled out. But I realized that while they prepaid for the pizzas over the phone with a credit card, they hadn't tipped, so no matter how bitter I was, I had to make in-person contact with whoever had ordered the pizzas, or I had basically just wasted half an hour. I went around the room asking for Margaret, the name on the order, and eventually someone put me in front of her. Our shop doesn't have a uniform or anything, so I started to explain. "Hi, Margaret, right? You ordered," and she was really frazzled, I guess running the event, so she cut me off and was like, "Oh good, you're here. We were starting to wonder. I don't think Bonnie has been matched with anyone yet. Wait right here." I tried to cut in and explain I'd just delivered the pizzas, and she'd mistaken me for someone else, but it went right over her head. She pushed an old woman over in a wheelchair and said, practically shouting, "Bonnie, this young man is here just for you." Before I could try my explanation again, Bonnie replied, "He is he? Well, full disclosure, son, don't get too attached, 'cause Jesus has my heart." Margaret, the one who'd ordered the pizza, or at least the name we had on it, whispered to me, "She's a real live wire. Have fun." And then Margaret and my tip were in the wind. Bonnie looked up at me and went, "You like bridge? I hope you brought your checkbook," and started wheeling away to a table. I followed her, thinking I'd better not lose track of her until I could return her to Margaret. I spotted a woman with an ID badge, who looked like she knew what she was doing and explained that I was the pizza delivery guy, but someone had left me with this old woman in my charge. I guess my explanation wasn't clear enough because I said something like, "Hey, I was actually delivering some pizzas up here." And the girl says, "You brought pizza? Oh, that's so nice. I'll make sure you're compensated." So at first I thought, great, all resolved now. But no. She gave me a wad of cash, and this organizer disappeared, leaving me with Bonnie and her deck of cards. I kept looking for Margaret to return this lady to, but also did kind of enjoy making conversation with her, and knew no other deliveries would be coming in since we'd closed on my drive over. I actually did like listening to Bonnie talk about the YouTube conspiracies she wholeheartedly believed, and the spat she was having with the arts and crafts chaperone and so on. She even gave me a recipe. But I was worried that she had dementia and thought I was a family member, or that she was expecting a particular visitor, and at any moment, a guy would storm in and say, "What are you doing with my aunt?" or something. So, finally, I saw the second organizer again, the one who'd given me the cash. I figured Margaret may never return, so I shouldn't wait for her, and I pulled the organizer aside and said, "Look, there's been a mix-up. I don't really know this woman." The organizer seemed distracted. She was doing several things at once, and she very casually said, "Oh, there's no mix-up. The pairings were totally random. You weren't expected to have much in common. You'll get to know her. Don't overthink it." And receded back into the crowd while I was still saying, "No, I'm just delivering pizza." At that point, I seriously considered leaving because it wasn't my fault that these people were unorganized. But Bonnie was waiting for me with this huge grin on her face to play more cards, and it didn't look like there were any real relatives coming for her. So I figured I would stick it out for a few more games. I was eventually able to pick up in context from eavesdropping on other pairs that this was not a mother-child extravaganza. It was a volunteer event for women living at the senior home without kids or whose kids couldn't visit them. That was a huge relief because I would have felt really terrible if she was a dementia patient who thought her son had come. Especially because I was kind of enjoying being mothered by her, for lack of a better term. It felt really good to have someone asking what I was doing at work and saying they were proud of me. She proudly bragged to everyone we passed on our courtyard walk about this silly little Employee of the Week award I just won. Basically a title only. You get your photo on the wall, but everyone gets it at some point and usually more than once. But she made it feel really important. And I really secretly loved how she got outraged over minor transgressions on my behalf. Like, I told her how my landlord is sticking it to me on repairs, and she was like, "He's quite the ripe hair in the tuna," with such sincere gusto. She said she knew a guy who could tune him up for me, and I don't think she was talking about repairs, but I didn't follow up. Every time I tried to extricate myself, she'd have another activity she'd want to do. Once we finished cards, she wanted to do arts and crafts. Once we did that, she wanted me to push her around the courtyard. Once we did that, she was famished from the walk, even though all she did was sit in her wheelchair, and wanted pizza. And I'd fed her 2 slices before an orderly appeared and angrily informed me she was not supposed to eat pizza. I don't know how she then ended up with a 3rd slice, but I seriously did not give it to her. Finally, the party was winding down, and she wanted me to hang out and watch a game show with her. About 30 seconds into the show, she was asleep. I left her a coupon, even though I guess she isn't supposed to eat pizza, and headed home. It was kind of nice to spend Mother's Day doing Mother's Day type stuff. Really nice, actually. At this point in my life and career, if you want to call it that, I can have no wholly good memories that involve pizza. But this was pretty close. So happy Mother's Day to those who celebrated it. Story 6. When I was in high school, I wasn't very good at writing essays in English. I understood all the concepts, but filling out a few pages of extra material wasn't something I could easily do in 45 minutes of class time. For a few weeks, we had a student teacher completing her teaching block. Knowing that students often circle around substitute and student teachers like sharks, she didn't tolerate any nonsense but overcompensated. And more than a few of the students in my class checked out or openly antagonized her. This only made her more defensive against the sarcastic teenagers we were. For me, the turning point came when I tried to answer a question about the use of a very specific term in a poem about soldiers from the First World War. The poet used wheeled chair instead of wheelchair. I raised my hand and gave an interpretation that made sense, and I had always been told there were no wrong answers in these types of discussions. However, instead of encouragement, I received a harsh, "No, you're wrong," noted. Soon, We had to complete an essay on what we'd learned over the last few weeks. The question was something like, how did the author make you feel when reading text? Having mentally checked out of English class and not being particularly skilled at that kind of work, I, as the defiant kid I was, wrote a couple of paragraphs summarizing the message of the text and bluntly stated that I didn't feel anything when reading it. The next Monday, we got our essays back, and I had received a score of 5 out of 25. More than I expected, so I figured those 2 paragraphs must have been decent. The student teacher took me aside and expressed her disappointment, saying I could have done better, and pointed out that everyone else wrote 2 or 3 pages, while I barely managed half a page. It all felt quite insincere to me, given that she hadn't hesitated to tell me or anyone else when we were wrong. She asked why I wrote that, and I replied that I genuinely didn't have an emotional response to it. Why pretend? She then said I could either accept the failing grade or rewrite the essay during the next class. All right, I'll take the grade. No point wasting time. She seemed taken aback and took a moment to respond. Really? Are you sure? Yes, I'm not good at this sort of thing. Remember, I didn't get it right in class, so why would that change overnight? Defeated, she sent me back to class and stepped out for a few minutes. Shortly afterward, I was called out again to speak with my regular teacher. She asked why I didn't think I could do better and what I didn't understand about the question. After discussing it for a while, she told me that I would have to redo the essay with a new text and question one that was worded in a way that wouldn't allow me to just say, I didn't. In the end, I wrote around 2 pages and barely passed. The student teacher stayed for another 2 weeks, and I noticed a few things. First, she no longer reacted with outright contempt when someone gave an answer that wasn't exactly what she expected. Second, she stopped trying to engage in battles of wits with other self-sabotaging students. As a bonus story about my regular teacher, she was young and really nice, though, looking back, I think she was one of those sensitive but slightly naive types of people. We were assigned to come up with a pilot episode for a TV show and present it to the class. One student read out the first episode of Burn Notice word for word and received top marks along with heaps of praise.